Thank you all for coming today. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we'll be exploring the complete story of Reborn as 3 Cowboys Ranch Princess, covering the key events, major plot twists, and unforgettable moments that make this drama so captivating. If you're new here, consider subscribing and enabling notifications to stay updated with our latest drama recaps and story breakdowns. Now, without wasting any time, let's begin the recap.
The memory of my previous life always began with the cold. It was a seeping, bone-deep chill that had nothing to do with the Texas winter and everything to do with the sprawling, soulless mansion of the Fisher family. My parents had split 2 years prior. At the time, foolish and desperate for validation, I believed that if I just stayed with my father, if I just tried hard enough, they would finally see me as one of their own. I scrubbed floors, I slept in the drafty barn on bales of hay, and I swallowed their insults like bitter pills. I thought loyalty would earn me love. I was wrong. To them, I wasn't a daughter or a sister. I was an asset, something to be traded. The day everything ended, the air in my father's study smelled of expensive cigars and cheap cruelty. "Stop crying like a baby," my brother Brian sneered, his voice dripping with venom. He leaned against a heavy mahogany desk, swirling a glass of bourbon. "We dragged you out of that dump, didn't we? We gave you clothes. We gave you a goddamn bed. Now, it's time to pay up, bitch." My father didn't even look up from his ledger. "Mr. Patterson owns half the goddamn oil in West Texas. We are handing you a rich husband on a silver platter. You should be on your knees thanking us." My stomach lurched violently. Mr. Patterson, a man 3 times my age, with dead eyes and a reputation that made the maids whisper in terrified hushed tones. "Thanking you," I choked out, my throat raw. "You're selling me off to that disgusting creep." Lila, my sister, stepped forward, her perfectly manicured nails glinting in the dim light. She wore a smirk that I had come to loathe. "You marry Patterson, Cassidy. It's our only way into the old money ranchers. Not every girl gets a chance to play in the big leagues like you, sis. Why the hell don't you just marry him?" "Because I am not a piece of property," I screamed, the last remnants of my broken spirit flaring into defiance. "I will never marry that disgusting creep. I'd rather die." My father finally looked at me, his eyes devoid of anything resembling paternal warmth. "No, you'll marry him, or I'll break both your fucking legs." He gestured sharply to Brian. "Keep her locked in the cellar. The wedding is tomorrow. Don't let her screw up my deal." As Brian dragged me down the hallway, the hardwood floors digging into my knees, I heard Lila's mocking laughter echoing off the walls. "See you at the wedding, sis." They threw me into the dark, damp cellar. The heavy iron lock clicked into place, sealing my fate. I huddled in the corner, the cold seeping into my very soul. Hours bled into one another. When the smoke started to filter through the cracks in the door, thick and choking, I realized what had happened. They didn't want a runaway bride. They wanted an insurance payout. "Finally got rid of that worthless bitch, sister," I imagined Brian saying as the flames licked the floorboards above me. As the fire consumed the house, my lungs burned, and my vision faded to black. My last thought was not of fear, but of profound, searing regret. If I had the chance to start over, I would never choose them again. I gasped, my eyes snapping open. My lungs desperately sought air, expecting the acrid taste of smoke, but instead, I breathed in the crisp, sterile scent of a law office. I blinked, my vision swimming into focus. The heavy mahogany table, the stacks of legal documents, the stark fluorescent lighting. I was sitting in a leather chair, my hands trembling violently in my lap. I looked to my left. My mother, Sarah, sat there, her face pale and drawn, clutching a tissue. To my right sat my father, looking as arrogant and impatient as the day he sentenced me to die. "Cassidy, are you okay?" a voice whispered in my mind. I looked down at my hands. There were no blisters, no soot. My breathing slowed as a sudden, impossible realization washed over me. God had actually given me a second chance. I was back. I was back on the exact day my parents split. The day that decided everything. "Yeah," I breathed out, my voice trembling but gaining strength. "Yeah, I'm okay, Mom." The lawyer cleared his throat. "So, Cassidy, the custody arrangement requires your input. Who do you choose to live with?" In my past life, I had looked at my father's wealth, his promises of a better life, and I had chosen him. I had thought they were my family, but they had sold me off like a horse. Never again. I stood up slowly, pushing the chair back. The leather squeaked against the silence of the room. I didn't look at my father. I didn't look at Brian or Lila, who were sitting in the corner with expressions of sheer boredom. "I choose Mom," I said. The words were a quiet vow, ringing with absolute certainty. My father's face contorted into an ugly sneer. He slammed his hand on the table. "I brought you back from that foster home, and this is how you repay me. You ungrateful bitch." Mom flinched, but I stood my ground. "Mom's marrying into the Hardgrove family," my father spat, his voice laced with venomous superiority. "Shitty ranchers with a broke farm. I run the biggest agro business in Texas. Those kind of farmers beg the fishers for the scraps off our table. They're just like you, Cassidy. A bunch of leeches." Lila flipped her hair over her shoulder, stepping up beside my father and looping her arm through his. "Hey, if Cassidy hates us and wants to leave, that's fine. Let her. I'll stay with you, Daddy. I'll always be a daddy's girl." My father smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "That's my girl. Always knows who treats her best. Too bad the one I share blood with ain't half as good. That foster home taught you jack shit. Cassidy is our daughter," Mom interrupted, her voice shaking but defensive. My father waved a dismissive hand. "Forget it. She's done with you after today. Come on, sweetheart," he said to Lila. As they walked past me, he leaned in and hissed, "You dumb bitch. Those 3 Hardgrove boys are total savages. Enjoy your stinky little farm, loser." I watched them walk out the door, feeling an immense, crushing weight lift off my shoulders. I didn't care about their wealth. I didn't care about their status. I had survived the fire, and I had left the ashes behind. Miles away, nestled in the vast, untamed expanse of West Texas, the Hardgrove Ranch stretched out like a kingdom. Despite what my biological father believed, the Hardgroves were anything but broke. Clayton Hardgrove commanded an empire, though he preferred the quiet life of a rancher to the flashy boardrooms of the city. In the sprawling stable, 3 men leaned against the wooden fencing, watching a stable hand exercise a purebred stallion. These were the Hardgrove brothers. Tyler, the eldest, adjusted the brim of his Stetson. He possessed a calm, calculating demeanor, sharp eyes taking in every detail. Beside him stood Finley, wild and impulsive, with a constant, rebellious spark in his eyes. And then there was Bose. Quiet, brooding, and fiercely protective, Bose carried a darkness around him, a remnant of the fire that had taken his biological family 20 years ago before Clayton had taken him in and raised him as his own. "So, it's true," Tyler drawled, his voice a low rumble. "The old man's getting married again." Bose didn't look away from the horse. "Got nothing to do with me," Finley scoffed, kicking a pebble into the dirt. "Heard the new wife comes with a +1. A fisher girl." Tyler let out a humorless laugh. "Yeah, all hot shit wannabes. Sharks swimming around the Hardgrove name. Lies, setups, women throwing themselves at Dad. And now here we are. This new sister? I bet she's a gold digger too, just like the rest of them." Bose finally turned, his jaw set. "So what do we do about it?" A dangerous, mischievous grin spread across Finley's face. "Why don't we put on a little show? We'll pretend like we're 3 broke farm boys. Hide the cars, wear the dirty boots, make the place look rough. Let's see where her loyalty really lies." Tyler nodded slowly, approving of the plan. "Let's see if the fisher girl can handle the mud." The drive to the Hardgrove Ranch took hours, the city skyline dissolving into rolling plains and endless skies. As Mom pulled her beat-up sedan through the rusted iron gates, a prop, I would later learn, set up specifically by the brothers, I looked out the window with a sense of cautious hope. "Okay," I whispered to myself, looking at the modest, slightly weathered farmhouse at the end of the driveway. "This place doesn't look so bad. This time, I can finally start a new life here with Mom." I stepped out of the car, the West Texas wind immediately whipping through my hair. The smell of pine, horses, and dry earth filled my lungs. It was the scent of freedom. "Cassidy," Mom called out from the trunk, wrestling with my singular, battered suitcase. "Can you grab that box?" "I got it," I said, reaching into the back seat. As I turned around, my breath hitched. Walking out of the barn were 2 of the most intimidating men I had ever seen. They were both shirtless, their torsos glistening with sweat and smeared with dark, thick mud. They moved with the rugged, effortless grace of men who worked the land with their bare hands. One of them Finley wiped a streak of mud from his forehead, his eyes locking onto mine with a challenging glint. "Hey," he called out, his tone dripping with mock condescension. "Let me guess. City girl wandered off and got lost." I blinked, momentarily paralyzed. Holy shit! Why are they both half naked? Focus, Cassidy. Focus! Before I could respond, Mom walked up beside me, beaming. "Ah, you must be Finley and Tyler. Your dad showed me your pictures." She stepped forward, extending a warm hand. "I'm Sarah. Clayton must have mentioned I'm your new stepmom. We're gonna be one big happy family." Finley looked at her hand, then looked at me, a smirk playing on his lips. "So, she's our new baby sister?" Tyler leaned against a wooden post, crossing his arms. I could feel his gaze dissecting me, looking for any sign of disgust or entitlement. He whispered something to Finley, low enough that I could barely catch it. "Right. Classic gold digger. She's definitely here for the money." Finley stepped forward, motioning vaguely toward the modest house. "Well, hop in. Welcome to country life, sis." I gripped the handle of my box, my knuckles turning white. Great, I thought. My new brothers hate me already. But as I looked at the muddy boots on their feet and the rustic charm of the porch, I felt a strange sense of calm. Compared to getting tortured every day at the Fishers, being locked in a cellar, and burning alive, I could deal with a little attitude from 3 Cowboys. Suddenly, the screen door pushed open, and Clayton Hardgrove stepped out. He was a towering man with kind lines etched around his eyes. "Sarah," he smiled, his face lighting up. He walked down the steps and enveloped my mother in a hug before turning his warm gaze to me. "Welcome home, Cassidy," he said gently. He looked at the boys, his voice taking on a slightly sterner, fatherly tone. "You boys are going to take care of your new baby sister, right?" The boys mumbled their half-hearted agreements, but Clayton didn't seem to mind. He turned back to me. "Welcome to your new home, sweetie. Please, come with me. I've got something to show you." I followed Clayton into the house. The interior was cozy, filled with worn leather furniture and the smell of home-cooked meals. He led me up a narrow wooden staircase and pushed open a door at the end of the hall. "This is it," he said softly. I stepped into the room and stopped dead in my tracks. It was beautiful. The walls were painted a soft, warm cream. A massive bed with a thick floral quilt sat in the center of the room. A large window overlooked the sprawling pastures, bathing the room in golden afternoon sunlight. In my last life, I slept on scratchy hay in the stable. I begged for scraps of food from the kitchen staff like a dog. These people barely knew me. They thought they were just poor farmers, and yet they were giving me a sanctuary. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes. I turned to Clayton, my voice breaking. Is it okay if I stay here?" Clayton looked taken aback, a flicker of sadness passing through his eyes at my timid question. "It's absolutely perfect, Cassidy. It's yours. Thank you," I whispered, bowing my head to hide my tears. "Thank you so much, Mr. Clayton," he smiled, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "I'm glad you like it. It's been a long trip for you. You get some rest." As the door clicked shut behind him, I walked over to the bed and ran my hand over the soft quilt. For the first time in my lives, I felt entirely, undeniably safe. But the shadows of my past were not so easily outrun. The sanctuary of my new room was not enough to keep the ghosts of my past at bay. Sleep claimed me quickly, my exhausted body sinking into the plush mattress, but my mind betrayed me. The dream started the same way the reality had ended. The smell of smoke. The oppressive, suffocating heat. The jagged splinters of the cellar door scraping against my bloody fingernails. Through the crackling roar of the flames, Brian's voice echoed, distorted and demonic. "You think you could run? You're nothing to me, you hear me? Who doesn't want to get rid of a worthless bitch?" The fire surged, licking at my ankles. I screamed, thrashing against the inescapable heat. My eyes snapped open. I jolted upright in bed, my chest heaving, sheets tangled around my sweat-drenched legs. The cool night air of Texas drifted through the partially open window, brushing against my feverish skin. "It's okay, Cassidy," I told myself, gripping the edge of the quilt until my knuckles ached. "It's over. You're safe now." But the adrenaline refused to subside. The walls of the room, though painted in cheerful colors, suddenly felt too close. The silence of the farmhouse rang in my ears. I needed air. I needed to know there were no walls holding me in. Throwing off the covers, I slipped out of the house, my bare feet carrying me across the cool, dew-kissed grass. The moon hung low and heavy in the sky, casting long, silver shadows across the sprawling pastures. The sheer vastness of the Hardgrove land was grounding. I walked further than I intended, the rhythmic crunch of dirt beneath my feet soothing my racing heart. But the peaceful solitude was shattered by a low, guttural growl. I froze. From the brush ahead, 3 pairs of yellow eyes materialized. Wolves! They were gaunt, predatory, and moving with terrifying coordination. My breath caught in my throat. I tried to command my legs to run, to step back, but the sheer primal terror locked my joints in place. I was going to die here, ripped apart in the dark, just days after getting my second chance. Suddenly, a shadow detached itself from the tree line. "Back off!" A commanding voice roared. A tall figure stepped between me and the wolves, wielding a heavy wooden branch. It was Bose. He didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. He swung the makeshift weapon with brutal, practiced precision, striking the ground and shouting until the predators, sensing they were outmatched by his sheer aggression, turned and melted back into the darkness. Silence fell over the clearing, save for my ragged breathing. Bose dropped the branch and turned to face me. The moonlight caught the hard, uncompromising lines of his jaw. "Cold night to be out for a stroll," he said, his voice a low, rough baritone. "Especially with a pack of wolves tracking you like you're their dinner." I swallowed hard, shivering violently in the aftermath of the adrenaline drop. "Sorry, thank you." He stepped closer, his dark eyes studying me intently. "You're the Fisher's girl, Cassidy." I looked up at him. In my past life, I had heard the tragic rumors of the Hardgrove family's adopted son. "You know me?" I murmured, my voice trembling. "You're Bose. I know about the fire. 20 years ago. Clayton took you in." A flicker of surprise crossed his guarded expression, quickly replaced by a stoic mask. "Sorry," I stammered, wrapping my arms around myself. I just had a really bad dream. I wanted to take a stroll." "Come on," he said abruptly, turning his back to me. "Ride back with me." I tried to take a step forward, but my knees buckled. The paralyzing fear had drained every ounce of strength from my muscles. I can't move." Bose stopped, glancing back over his shoulder. He let out a quiet sigh, then walked over and effortlessly scooped me up into his arms. The sudden proximity to him was startling. He felt solid, unmovable, and grounded in a way I desperately needed. "Keep your eyes on the road," he muttered as he carried me back toward the farmhouse, his gaze fixed straight ahead, determined to keep the walls of his emotional fortress intact. I wasn't. I mumbled, my cheeks burning as I realized I had been staring at the strong profile of his face. The rest of the journey was silent, but the chilling fear of the night had completely vanished, replaced by the steady, reassuring heartbeat of the man carrying me. The next morning, the golden sun baked the earth, painting the ranch in vibrant hues of green and brown. My legs had recovered, and I was determined to prove my worth. I found Bose in the stables, mucking out the stalls. "Thank you," I said softly, leaning against the wooden railing. "And I'm sorry again for last night." Bose didn't pause his work. He tossed a pitchfork full of hay over his shoulder. "Get some rest. When your legs start feeling better, you start working. No special treatment on this farm." He was testing me. He expected me to balk at the idea of manual labor, to demand a soft life. He didn't know I had spent years treating a barn like my bedroom. "I don't want special treatment," I fired back, my voice steady and resolute. Bose finally stopped, resting his hands on the handle of the pitchfork. A tiny, almost imperceptible smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. "We'll see about that." "Yes, we will," I challenged, holding his gaze. Later that afternoon, the true test arrived. A restless, powerful stallion was kicking wildly in the paddock, refusing to let any of the stable hands near him. Tyler and Finley stood by the fence, watching the commotion with crossed arms. "Let's see what you can do, huh?" Tyler called out as I approached the fence. It was a clear setup. I didn't hesitate. I slipped through the wooden rungs of the fence and slowly walked toward the panicked animal. The stable hands backed away, warning me, but I tuned them out. I kept my breathing even, projecting absolute calm. "Hey," I murmured, keeping my hands visible and low. "Hey, buddy, I got you." "It's okay, boy." The horse reared back, but I held my ground. I closed the distance, speaking in soft, rhythmic tones until I could press the palm of my hand against his warm, velvety snout. The stallion's chest heaved, but the frantic kicking stopped. He let out a long breath, leaning into my touch. Guess I'm not just the girl who brushes horses anymore, I thought to myself, a genuine smile breaking across my face. From the other side of the fence, Clayton clapped his hands together, his face alight with astonishment. It's your first time? That never happens. Takes most people 3 months to get that kind of connection. Really? I asked, patting the horse's neck. Clayton turned to his sons, a decisive gleam in his eye. You know, I think we should enroll you in Lone Star Academy. It's the best riding school around here. Panic spiked in my chest. Me? Shouldn't I stay here and take care of the farm? That would be wasted talent, Clayton insisted. He turned to his middle son, Finley. Boy, come over here for a second. Finley sauntered over, a skeptical look on his face. Yes, sir. Cassidy is going to join you at Lone Star Academy. You're going to share your horse with her. Finley's eyes widened in horror. What? Why me? I don't want to because she's your sister now, Clayton interrupted firmly. Got to look out for her. Everybody's got to take care of our little princess. I looked down, overwhelmed. Thank you, I whispered. I wasn't even allowed to go to school before. Well, you're in good hands now, Clayton smiled warmly. Behind the barn, Finley cornered me as I was brushing the dirt off my jeans. Listen, he said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. That school is full of rich kids. We're just farmers. So don't get any crazy ideas above your station. I looked at him, completely unbothered by his gruff demeanor. A family that feeds me and doesn't hurt me? It's better than what I've ever had before, Finley. He blinked, entirely thrown off by my sincerity. The hostile edge in his posture melted away, replaced by a sudden, awkward confusion. He reached out abruptly, his hand hovering near my face before his fingers gently plucked a stray piece of hay from my hair. Ah, he mumbled, his cheeks flushing pink. There was something in your hair. He quickly turned away, muttering under his breath as he stomped toward the driveway. Shit! What the hell was I doing? I'm supposed to be testing her, not playing Big Brother. I hid a smile and followed him. When we reached his rusted, beat-up pickup truck, another prop in their elaborate ruse to appear impoverished, he hopped into the driver's seat and leaned out the window. Well, he barked. What are you waiting for? I gestured to the passenger door, which was jammed shut with a piece of wire. I have to sit in the back? Finley flashed a wicked, challenging grin. What did you expect? First class, my lady. After you, right? I laughed, shaking my head. Without another word, I climbed up the tire and vaulted myself into the dusty truck bed, making myself comfortable on a folded tarp. Finley watched me in the rearview mirror, a look of genuine surprise crossing his features before he shifted the truck into gear. The engine roared to life, and as we kicked up a trail of dust down the ranch road, I felt a thrilling sense of anticipation. For the first time in my existence, I was headed toward a future I actually wanted to live. Lone Star Academy was everything the Hardgrove Ranch was not. Where the ranch was rugged, untamed, and grounded in the dirt of hard labor, the academy was polished to a sickening sheen. Pristine white fences stretched as far as the eye could see, enclosing manicured emerald lawns. Sleek, imported sports cars and luxury SUVs lined the sprawling parking lot. Finley's rusted, sputtering pickup truck stuck out like a sore thumb as we rattled through the grand iron gates. Look at this place, I murmured, leaning over the edge of the truck bed, taking in the towering oak trees and the massive indoor riding arenas. It looks like a country club, not a school. Finley parked the truck near the back of the lot, cutting the engine, which died with a pathetic wheeze. Before I could even hop down from the bed, the roar of a heavy engine echoed across the asphalt. A sleek, custom-built motorcycle pulled up alongside us, the rider cutting the engine and kicking the stand down in one fluid motion. He pulled off his matte black helmet, shaking out dark, unruly hair. It was Bo's. My heart did a traitorous little flip in my chest. I quickly looked down, scolding my own mind. No, Cassidy, he's adopted, but he's still someone in the family. You can't see him that way. He is your brother now. I vaulted out of the truck bed, dusting off my jeans. Bose, what are you doing here? He didn't smile, his dark eyes impassive as he secured his helmet to the bike. Not that I want to be. I was told to handle your enrollment by a stubborn old man trying to impress his new stepdaughter. He gestured toward the massive administrative building at the far end of the campus. Don't waste my time. Get on. I hesitated, looking at the narrow leather seat behind him. The farm doesn't make that much money, I said softly, genuinely perplexed. But they're willing to send me to this expensive school? Bose swung his leg over the bike, steadying it. He looked at me, a cryptic glint in his eye. You're about 2 inches from what I'm told the horses make. Get on. I climbed onto the back of the motorcycle, my hands awkwardly hovering in the air, unsure of where to hold on. Just give you some space, Bose muttered, glancing at me over his shoulder, a hint of a smirk finally breaking through his stoic facade. What, you afraid of me, Cassidy? No, of course not. I shot back, my cheeks flushing. Look, will you stop teasing me? This place is really expensive, and I'm trying to focus. He let out a low chuckle that I felt vibrating through the frame of the bike more than I heard it. As we rolled toward the main office, I couldn't help but feel a bizarre sense of security. I had 3 entirely different, entirely intimidating older brothers, and against all odds, they were starting to look out for me. By noon, my enrollment was finalized. Bose had left to handle ranch business, leaving me in Finley's notoriously unpredictable care. I was walking across the manicured courtyard, carrying a stack of course schedules, marveling at the fact that I was actually a student. In my past life, education was a privilege completely denied to me. My only curriculum had been scrubbing baseboards and taking abuse. Well. The voice sliced through the warm afternoon air, freezing the blood in my veins. It was a voice I had heard right before the cellar door slammed shut, right before the smoke began to rise. I turned slowly. Standing beneath the shade of an oak tree were Brian and Lila. They looked exactly as they had in my nightmares, draped in designer clothes, their faces twisted into identical, cruel sneers. Look who's suddenly got money for writing lessons now, Lila mocked, looking me up and down with absolute disgust. She turned to her brother. The girl who used to sleep in the barn is suddenly a horsewoman. I swallowed the rising panic. You are not that girl anymore, I reminded myself. I stood up straight, clutching my folders to my chest. I have nothing to say to you. Leave me alone. I turned to walk away, but Brian lunged forward. His hand clamped down on my arm like a vice, his nails digging painfully into my skin. I'm not done talking to you yet, Brian hissed, yanking me back toward him. You're coming home, all right? You got laundry to do. The new maid never makes it as clean as you do. The sheer audacity of it made me sick. Let go of me, Brian, I shouted, struggling against his grip. I'm not leaving with you, Ashholes. Ashholes, Brian laughed, raising his other hand as if to strike me. Okay, all right, let's see how much you talk. He never finished his sentence. From out of nowhere, a hand shot out and clamped around Brian's wrist with terrifying force. Finley materialized beside us, his eyes practically burning with a quiet, lethal rage. The goofy, sarcastic farm boy was completely gone. In his place was a predator. Get your hand off my sister, Finley growled, his voice dropping an octave. Or I'll fucking break it. Brian grimaced in pain but let go of my arm, taking a step back. He massaged his wrist, his arrogance quickly returning as he recognized Finley's faded jeans and scuffed boots. That's Finley from the Hart Farm, Brian sneered to Lila. He puffed out his chest, stepping back into Finley's space. Oh, I'm a fisher, all right. My family owns 3 plants here. What the hell are you going to do about it, farm boy? Huh? Farm boy. Finley didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. He calmly reached into his pocket and pulled out his cell phone, dialing a number without breaking eye contact with Brian. Hey, Principal Martin, Finley said, his tone entirely casual, as if he were ordering a pizza. I'm doing good. I got a question for you. Can you expel the Fisher kids? Like, all of them? He paused, nodding. Thanks. He hung up and slid the phone back into his pocket. Brian stared at him for a second before bursting into hysterical laughter. Lila joined in, clapping her hands. That's funny. Brian wiped a tear from his eye. You almost had me. Like you fucking think that's going to do anything. The crackle of the campus pause system interrupted him. Attention students and faculty. Lila and Brian Fisher, you are both expelled. You have 5 minutes to leave campus immediately. The color drained from Brian's face in an instant. His jaw dropped. Lila gasped, looking around frantically as students began to stare. What the fuck was that? Brian stammered, stepping back, genuine fear finally entering his eyes. Who the fuck are you? You're just a farm boy. Finley took a slow, deliberate step forward, forcing Brian to retreat another pace. Maybe Principal Martin likes our beef that much, Finley said coldly. You two stay away from my sister now. Got it? Let's go. As the Fisher siblings practically sprinted toward their car in utter humiliation, I looked at Finley, completely bewildered. The Hardgroves were supposedly poor. How on earth did he just command the principal of an elite academy to expel 2 of the wealthiest kids in the county? Finley, I asked, my voice hushed. What did you just do? Do you actually know the principal? Finley immediately broke eye contact, rubbing the back of his neck as the dangerous aura vanished, replaced by his usual awkward shrug. Nah, he lied effortlessly. Just messing with him a little. It was a pre-recorded call over the pack. He'll find out in a bit, but by then, too late. I stared at him, not believing a word of it, but too overwhelmed to press the issue. You are such a menace, I laughed, the adrenaline finally leaving my system. Finley grinned, tossing his keys in the air. Come on, let's go home. As we walked back to his rusted truck, I realized just how much they were hiding. Jesus, I thought, almost blew their cover. The late afternoon sun cast long, dusty rays across the main riding arena back at the Hardgrove Ranch. The air was thick with the smell of sweet feed and leather. It was time for my first official riding lesson, and Tyler, the eldest brother, had taken on the role of instructor. He stood in the center of the ring, wearing a worn denim shirt and a weathered Stetson that cast his sharp features in shadow. I was mounted on a beautiful, temperamental roan mare. Whoa, easy girl, I whispered as the horse danced nervously sideways, kicking up small clouds of dust. Come on, move. Come on, girl. Tyler watched me patiently, his arms crossed over his chest. Cassie, he called out, his voice steady and commanding. Oh, shoot, I stammered, pulling the reins awkwardly. I thought you were talking about the horse. Tyler shook his head, a faint, encouraging smile on his lips. He stepped closer, placing a steadying hand on the horse's flank. Okay, focus. Tighten your core. You have to match the horse's rhythm. You don't fight her, you move with her. I took a deep breath, trying to follow his instructions, but my posture was rigid with anxiety. Rise up, Tyler instructed, gesturing with his hand. Push with your hips and your legs. Up, down, up, down. I tried to mimic the motion, pushing up in the stirrups. Like this? Yeah, Tyler said softly, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. That's my girl. The praise sent a sudden, entirely inappropriate rush of heat to my cheeks. I gripped the reins tighter, desperately trying to keep my face neutral. Me? Or the horse? I mentally scrambled. No, 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 he is just trying to be a brother to you. Stop it, girl. Focus on the ride. I forced my attention back to the mechanics. I tightened my core, relaxed my shoulders, and felt the powerful surge of the animal beneath me. Suddenly, the disjointed bouncing stopped. I caught the rhythm. The world smoothed out into a perfect, fluid glide. All right, Tyler said, stepping back and giving the mare a light pat on the hindquarters. Time to take her out on your own. Keep your hands here. Take it easy. No fight. Go ahead, he nodded, signaling me forward. I gave a gentle squeeze with my calves, and the mare broke into a confident trot, then a smooth canter. As we circled the arena, the wind rushing past my ears, I looked back at Tyler. He was watching me with a look of undeniable pride. I wasn't the unwanted daughter anymore. I wasn't the maid. I was Cassidy Hardgrove. And as I rode under the vast Texas sky, surrounded by men who would move heaven and earth to protect me, I knew my second chance had truly just begun. From the center of the dusty arena, Tyler watched Cassidy guide the roan mare through a flawless figure eight. The setting sun caught the golden highlights in her hair, and for the first time since she had arrived at the ranch, he heard her laugh, a pure, unburdened sound that carried over the evening wind. Tyler tipped his Stetson down, a shadow falling over his calculating eyes. "That's my girl," he had told her. It had slipped out, an instinctual phrase of encouragement he usually reserved for gentling anxious horses. But the way she had looked at him, her eyes wide and flushing with a mix of gratitude and confusion, had struck a chord deep within his chest. "She's a natural," a low voice rumbled from the fence line. Tyler turned to see Bose leaning against the wooden rails, his dark eyes fixed on Cassidy. Finley was right beside him, tossing an apple in the air and catching it, though his usual smirk was absent. "Lesson's over," Tyler called out to Cassidy. "Walk her out and cool her down." "You did good today, thank you, Tyler." She beamed, patting the mare's neck affectionately as she guided the horse toward the cooling paddock. Once she was out of earshot, the three brothers convened in the tack room. From the outside, it looked like a standard storage shed filled with bridles, saddles, and rusted horseshoes. But behind a heavy sliding wall panel lay Tyler's makeshift office, complete with high-speed satellite internet, glowing monitors tracking global agricultural markets, and a mahogany desk that cost more than most people made in a year. This was the reality of the Hardgrove Empire. They weren't broke dirt farmers. They controlled supply chains across 3 continents. Tyler poured himself a glass of aged whiskey, leaning against his desk. "So, we need to talk about the Fisher girl," Cassidy, Bose corrected sharply, crossing his arms. "Her name is Cassidy, and she's not a Fisher." "Not anymore." Tyler raised an eyebrow, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "Getting attached, Bose? Need I remind you of the plan? Women drawn to the Hardgrove name usually come with an agenda. We agreed to play the part of the struggling, backwoods family to see if she and Sarah were just digging for gold. The plan is flawed," Bose stated flatly. "Look at her, Tyler. You think a gold digger volunteers to muck out stalls at 5 a.m. without being asked? You think a spoiled rich girl doesn't complain when you tell her there's no special treatment? She works harder than half our payroll." Finley leaned back in a leather chair, propping his muddy boots on the edge of Tyler's pristine desk. "He's right, Ty. The girl is completely oblivious. I drove her to Lone Star Academy in Old Bessie today. The truck literally stalled twice on the highway." "And?" Tyler asked. "And nothing." Finley threw his hands up. "She didn't complain once. She voluntarily climbed into the rusty truck bed and sat on a tarp. Lila Fisher would have rather walked barefoot over broken glass than be seen within 10 miles of that truck." Tyler took a slow sip of his whiskey, letting the burn settle in his chest. "I noticed it too," he admitted quietly. "When she arrived, she didn't look at the mud or the old farmhouse. She looked relieved." Bose's jaw tightened. "She has nightmares. Bad ones. The first night she was here, I found her out past the pastures. A pack of wolves had circled her. She was paralyzed, terrified out of her mind. When I carried her back, she was trembling like a leaf, apologizing just for breathing. Whoever the Fishers are, they didn't spoil her. They broke her." A heavy silence fell over the secret office. The brothers shared a look, the unspoken realization settling heavily upon them. They had prepared for a shark. Instead, they had taken in a wounded bird. "Well," Tyler sighed, setting his glass down, "it seems we've made a massive miscalculation. So we dropped the act." Finley asked, suddenly eager, "I can finally bring my cars out of storage? I'm getting real tired of driving that death trap." "No," Tyler said firmly. "Not yet. We dropped the hostility, yes. But if we suddenly reveal we're billionaires, we overwhelm her. We let her adjust to a safe, quiet life first. She needs peace, not the pressure of the Hardgrove legacy." For the next 2 weeks, life at the Hardgrove Ranch fell into a steady, comforting rhythm. Every morning, I woke before the sun, the lingering chill of the Texas night still clinging to the window panes. But instead of waking up to the sharp kicks and verbal abuse of the Fisher household, I woke to the smell of Mom's bacon frying in the kitchen downstairs and the distant sound of the horses nickering in the barn. I threw myself into the ranch work. I wanted to prove to Clayton, and especially to his intimidating sons, that I wasn't a freeloader. One particular morning, the sky was bruised with heavy, dark rain clouds. A summer storm was rolling in fast. I hurried to the stables, grabbing a heavy pitchfork to finish clearing the last 3 stalls before the rain hit. My muscles ached, a deep, satisfying soreness that came from honest labor. In my past life, physical pain meant punishment. Here, it meant progress. You're holding it wrong. I jumped, nearly dropping the pitchfork. Bose was standing in the doorway of the stall, his broad shoulders practically filling the frame. He wore a dark canvas jacket, rain beginning to spot the heavy fabric. "Bose," I breathed out, resting my hand on my chest to calm my racing heart. "You move too quietly for a man your size." He didn't smile, but his eyes were entirely devoid of the harsh suspicion they had held when I first arrived. He stepped into the stall, his boots crunching against the hay. Without asking, he reached out and covered my hands with his rough, calloused ones, adjusting my grip on the wooden handle. "You're using your back," he explained, his voice a low rumble just inches from my ear. The proximity sent a sudden shiver down my spine that had absolutely nothing to do with the dropping temperature. "Drop your hips. Use your legs to lift the weight. Otherwise, you'll tear a muscle." "Oh," I whispered, acutely aware of the warmth radiating from him. "Right. Use my legs." He stepped back, crossing his arms, waiting for me to demonstrate. I adjusted my stance, bending my knees, and scooped up a heavy pile of damp hay. It was significantly easier. "Better," he nodded. I leaned on the pitchfork, wiping a bead of sweat from my forehead. "Why are you always watching me, Bose? Waiting for me to fail?" He was silent for a long moment. Outside, the first crack of thunder echoed across the plains, followed by the heavy, rhythmic drumming of rain against the tin roof of the stable. "No," Bose finally said, his voice barely audible over the storm. "I'm watching to make sure you don't push yourself into the dirt trying to prove something you don't need to prove." I looked at him, startled by the unexpected softness in his tone. "Tyler thinks I'm a gold digger," I said quietly, voicing the insecurity that had been eating at me since I arrived. "And Finley is just Finley. But you know what it's like, don't you, to owe a family your life?" Bose's gaze snapped to mine, the air between us suddenly thick with an unspoken understanding. The fire that had taken his biological family 20 years ago. The flames that had taken my life before my rebirth. We both knew the smell of ash. We both knew the crushing weight of surviving. "Clayton took me in when I had nothing but the clothes on my back," Bose said, his voice completely stripped of its usual guarded armor. "I spent the first 5 years waiting for the other shoe to drop. Waiting for him to realize I wasn't worth the trouble." He took a step closer, the shadows of the storm casting his face in sharp relief. "You don't owe us your blood, Cassidy. You don't have to break your back in these stalls to earn your keep. You're a Hardgrove now. Act like it." Before I could respond, he turned and walked out into the pouring rain, leaving me alone in the quiet warmth of the barn, my heart pounding a frantic, hopeful rhythm against my ribs. "I'm telling you, I almost blew the entire operation," Finley groaned, pacing the length of Tyler's hidden office. Tyler didn't look up from his laptop. Expelling the Fisher kids from Lone Star Academy using a fake PA announcement and impersonating the principal. "Yes, Finley, I would classify that as nearly blowing the operation." "I couldn't help it." Finley defended himself, throwing his hands in the air. "Did you see the way that bastard grabbed her? Brian Fisher. He dug his nails into her arm like she was a stray dog. If we weren't playing this stupid poor farmer game, I would have bought his father's company right there on my phone and liquidated his trust fund just to watch him cry." Bose chuckled darkly from the corner, sharpening a hunting knife. "I would have preferred you break his arm, like you threatened to." "I almost did," Finley muttered, dropping into a chair. "But Cassidy, you should have seen her face, Ty. She was terrified, not just of them, but she was terrified of what they could do to us. She honestly believes we're just struggling ranchers. She told me not to provoke them because the Fishers are powerful." Tyler finally stopped typing. He closed the laptop with a soft click, his expression unreadable. She tried to protect you? Yes, Finley sighed, running a hand through his messy hair. She put herself between me and Brian. The girl was maybe 110 pounds soaking wet, and she's trying to shield me from a billionaire's son. Tyler leaned back in his chair, staring up at the ceiling. The three brothers, who had spent their entire adult lives fending off sycophants, corporate spies, and social climbers, had been completely disarmed by genuine, selfless loyalty. She went to riding practice today, Finley added, a small smile creeping onto his face. Rode the roan mare again. She's getting really good. I know, Tyler said softly. I taught her. Finley looked at Tyler, noticing the strange, almost possessive edge to his older brother's voice. He glanced at Bose, who was staring fixedly at the blade of his knife, a muscle feathering in his jaw. Finley was the impulsive one, but he wasn't stupid. He could read the room. The protective instincts that had flared to life in all three of them were beginning to mutate into something much deeper, much more complicated. So, Finley said slowly, leaning forward, what happens when she finds out? What happens when she realizes the truck is a prop, the mud is fake, and we own half the cattle in the state? Tyler met Finley's gaze, his eyes narrowing slightly. We make sure that when she finds out, she understands why we did it. Until then, we keep her safe. If the Fishers so much as look in her direction again, I'll handle them, Bose interrupted quietly. He slid the hunting knife into its leather sheath with a definitive snap. No paw announcements. No games. I'll handle them. The expulsion of Brian and Lila Fisher from Lone Star Academy sent shockwaves through the elite social circles of West Texas, but for me, it brought something much more profound, absolute, unbroken peace. For the first time into lifetimes, I walked through the world without looking over my shoulder. The sprawling campus of the academy, with its pristine white fences and manicured riding trails, no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like a playground. Finley made sure of it. Despite his complaints about the rusty pickup truck and the snobby rich kids, he never missed a day of driving me to and from the academy. He became a fixture by the paddocks, leaning against the fencing with a piece of straw in his teeth, his sharp eyes daring anyone to look at his sister the wrong way. The rumors about the broke farm boy who got the Fisher heirs expelled had spread like wildfire. No one dared cross him. One afternoon, as we were loading my riding gear into the back of Old Bessie, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up nearby. The window rolled down, revealing Principal Martin. He looked at Finley, then quickly averted his eyes, giving a stiff, incredibly respectful nod before driving away. I paused, holding my saddle pad. Finley, why does the principal of the most expensive academy in the state look at you like you're his boss? Finley didn't miss a beat. He grabbed the saddle pad from my hands and tossed it into the truck bed. I told you, Cass. He really loves our beef. We supply the cafeteria. Now get in before the rain hits. I am not dealing with you smelling like wet horse all the way home. I rolled my eyes, smiling as I climbed into the cab. I knew he was lying. I knew all three of them were hiding something massive behind their worn denim and muddy boots. The math simply didn't add up. A family struggling to make ends meet didn't send their adopted daughter to a school that cost more than a mortgage, nor did they command such terrifying respect from the local elite. But as I looked at Finley, who was currently wrestling with the truck's broken radio dial, I realized I didn't care. If they were hiding their wealth to test me, or to protect themselves, it didn't matter. They had protected me. They had given me a home when I was broken and hollow. Whatever secrets they kept in the shadows, their kindness in the light was undeniably real. Dinner at the Fisher household in my past life had been a masterclass in psychological warfare. The dining room was a cavernous space of cold marble and silent servants. If my father spoke to me at all, it was to criticize my posture, my grades, or my overall lack of value to his corporate empire. Dinner at the Hardgrove Ranch was a completely different universe. The wooden table in the center of the cozy kitchen was scratched, worn, and deeply loved. That evening, Mom had cooked a massive pot of chili, and the air was thick with the rich scent of tomatoes, cumin, and baking cornbread. Clayton sat at the head of the table, his booming laugh filling the room as Finley recounted a wildly exaggerated story about a stubborn mule. Bose sat quietly to my left, periodically nudging the butter dish toward me without looking up from his plate. Tyler sat across from me, his calm, calculating demeanor softening in the warm glow of the overhead light. "So, Cassidy," Clayton smiled, wiping his mouth with a napkin. "Tyler tells me you're ready to take the roan mare out on the open trails tomorrow. Solo." I nearly choked on my cornbread. I looked across the table at Tyler, my eyes wide. He did. Am I? Tyler held my gaze, his expression steady and full of quiet confidence. "You are. You've got the rhythm down. You stopped fighting the horse and started listening to her. You're ready. Isn't it dangerous to go out alone so soon?" Mom asked, her brow furrowing with maternal worry. "Sarah, she's only been riding for a few weeks. She won't be completely alone," Bose rumbled, his deep voice cutting through the chatter. "I'll be tracking the perimeter, just in case, and I'll be in the watchtower," Finley chimed in, pointing his spoon at me. "If she falls off, I want to make sure I have a clear view to laugh." I kicked Finley under the table. He yelped, rubbing his shin, while Clayton just chuckled and shook his head. I looked around the table at these four men and my mother. The sheer magnitude of my second chance hit me like a physical wave. I wasn't an asset to be traded to a billionaire creep. I wasn't a burden to be locked in a cellar and left to burn. I was surrounded by a fortress of fiercely protective, ridiculously stubborn cowboys who would literally go to war for me. "Thank you," I said softly, my voice wavering slightly with emotion. "For everything. For letting me be a part of this family." The table grew quiet. Clayton reached out and patted my hand, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "You've always been a part of this family, sweetheart. You just had to find your way home." The next afternoon, the Texas sky was an endless, breathtaking canopy of sapphire blue. The wind swept across the plains, rustling the tall prairie grass and carrying the scent of wild sage. Tyler led the roan mare out of the stables. The horse tossed her head, eager to run, but she stood perfectly still as I approached. I ran my hand down her neck, feeling the immense, coiled power beneath her sleek coat. "All right," Tyler said, stepping back and crossing his arms. He was wearing his signature Stetson, casting a shadow over his eyes, but I could see the intense focus in his gaze. "Time to take her out on your own." My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. In the enclosed arena, I felt safe. Out here, with hundreds of acres of open land stretching out before me, the illusion of control vanished. "Hands here," Tyler instructed, reaching out to gently adjust my grip on the leather reins. His calloused fingers brushed against my knuckles, sending a jolt of warmth up my arm. "Take it easy. Remember what we talked about. No fight. You guide her, but you let her breathe." I nodded, swallowing the lump of anxiety in my throat. "He's just trying to be a brother," I reminded myself, desperately trying to ignore the flutter in my stomach. "Focus on the ride." Tyler stepped back, giving the mare a reassuring pat on the flank. "Go ahead." I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the clean, untainted air of my new life. I gave a gentle squeeze with my calves. The mare stepped forward, her hooves crunching against the gravel driveway before transitioning softly onto the dirt trail. We started at a walk. The rhythmic swaying of the saddle grounded me. I looked back over my shoulder. Tyler was still standing by the barn, watching me. Further down the fence line, I saw Finley sitting on the top rail, giving me a lazy-to-finger salute. And up on the distant ridge, barely visible against the tree line, was the dark silhouette of Bose on his motorcycle, keeping his silent watch. They were letting me fly, but they were my safety net. "Okay, girl," I whispered to the mare. "Let's see what you've got." I shifted my weight and loosened the reins. The mare didn't need to be asked twice. She broke into a smooth trot, and then, with a powerful surge of her hind legs, she launched into a full gallop. The wind roared in my ears, whipping my hair behind me in a wild, chaotic banner. The sheer speed was terrifying, but the terror was instantly swallowed by an intoxicating, pure euphoria. The ground blurred beneath us. We were flying over the earth, unburdened and unbroken. As we crested the hill, the sprawling expanse of the Hardgrove Ranch spread out before me. The rolling green pastures, the winding river glinting like silver in the sunlight, the distant mountains standing as silent guardians. In my past life, I had died in the dark, suffocating in a cramped, locked cellar, surrounded by the ashes of a family that hated me. But God had given me a second chance. He had pulled me from the fire and placed me in the light. I had chosen to walk away from the toxic wealth of the Fishers, and in doing so, I had stumbled into a kingdom of mud, sweat, and genuine, unconditional love. I let out a loud, joyous laugh that was carried away by the wind. I leaned low over the mare's neck, moving in perfect harmony with her stride. I wasn't the scared girl begging for scraps anymore. I wasn't the gold digger they initially thought I was. I was Cassidy, and I was exactly where I belonged. I was the princess of the Hardgrove Ranch, and my life had only just begun. The ride did not last forever, but the feeling of it etched itself permanently into my bones. When I finally pulled the roan mare back into a gentle trot, easing her toward the stables, the sun had begun its slow descent, painting the Texas sky in vibrant strokes of bruised purple, burnt orange, and deep fiery gold. The ranch was bathed in a surreal, dreamlike light. It was the kind of beauty I had never been allowed to witness in my previous life, locked away in the sterile, unfeeling walls of the Fisher estate or trapped in the suffocating darkness of a cellar. As I approached the paddock, I saw Tyler still leaning against the wooden fence. He hadn't moved. He had watched my entire ride, his posture relaxed, but his eyes tracking my every movement with that same quiet, steady pride. I brought the mare to a halt and slipped out of the saddle, my boots hitting the dirt with a solid, satisfying thud. "Not bad," Tyler said, his voice carrying over the gentle evening breeze. He pushed his Stetson back slightly, revealing the faint lines of a genuine smile. "Not bad at all for a city girl," I laughed, the sound bubbling up effortlessly from my chest. I grabbed the reins and led the mare toward him. "I think the city girl is officially gone, Tyler. I don't think she ever really existed." Tyler reached out, giving the mare a slow pat on the neck before his gaze shifted down to me. The intensity in his eyes was disarming, a stark contrast to the suspicion that had clouded them on the day we met. "No," he agreed softly. "She didn't. You belong out here, Cassidy." Before I could respond, the loud, obnoxious crunch of tires on gravel broke the quiet moment. Finley came skidding to a halt in his rusted pickup truck, kicking up a massive cloud of dust that settled over us. He hopped out of the cab, tossing an apple into the air and catching it with a grin. "Well," Finley announced loudly, completely shattering the serene atmosphere. "I didn't have to call the paramedics. I'm honestly a little disappointed. I had my camera ready and everything." I rolled my eyes, playfully shoving his shoulder as he walked past. "You're a menace, Finley." "I am a protector of this realm," he corrected, taking a loud bite of the apple. He leaned against the truck, looking at me. "But seriously, you looked good out there, Cass. Like you've been doing it your whole life." A low rumble of a motorcycle engine announced Bose's arrival. He parked his bike near the barn, killed the engine, and walked over, his heavy boots silent against the earth. He didn't say a word, but as he stopped beside Finley, he gave me a single, definitive nod of approval. Coming from Bose, that nod was worth 1,000 words of praise. I looked at the three of them. Tyler, the stoic leader. Finley, the wild protector. Bose, the silent guardian. In my past life, the men in my family had been the source of my deepest pain and my ultimate demise. They had looked at me and seen nothing but a price tag. But these men, these three broke cowboys who secretly held the world in the palms of their hands, looked at me and saw a sister. They saw someone worth protecting, worth teaching, and worth loving. "Come on," Tyler said, turning toward the farmhouse where the warm yellow glow of the kitchen lights was already spilling out into the twilight. "Mom's got dinner waiting. And if we leave Finley out here any longer, he's going to eat all the horse apples." "Hey, Finley protested, chucking the core of his apple into the brush as he jogged to catch up with us. Bose fell into step beside me, his large frame acting as a familiar, comforting shield against the cooling night air. I walked between them, the dust settling on my boots, my heart full and unbroken. I thought back to the horrific heat of the fire, the betrayal of my biological father, and the cruel laughter of Brian and Lila. The warmth of the farmhouse was a stark contrast to the sprawling, sterile mansion of my past life, where the Fisher estate had echoed with the hollow sounds of footsteps on marble and whispered insults. The Hardgrove home hummed with life. Later that evening, after Mom's famous chili had been devoured and the dishes were cleared, the family gathered in the living room. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, casting dancing shadows across the worn leather sofas and the vintage rugs. The scent of hickory wood and cinnamon hung in the air. I sat on the floor with my back resting against the base of the sofa, a mug of hot cocoa warming my hands. Finley was sprawled out on the rug a few feet away, entirely engrossed in a game of cards with Bose, who was winning effortlessly without showing a single shred of emotion. Tyler sat in the armchair by the fire, a worn paperback book in his lap, though his eyes kept drifting over the pages to watch the room. "I still think you cheated," Finley grumbled, throwing his cards down in defeat. Bose slowly gathered the deck, his face a mask of absolute calm. "You just play with your mouth instead of your head, Finn. That's why you lose." Finley gasped in mock offense, clutching his chest. "Cassidy, tell him he's being mean to me," I laughed, taking a sip of my cocoa. "I think Bose is just stating facts, Finley." "Betrayed," Finley groaned, flopping dramatically onto his back. "Betrayed by my own sister. The tragedy." From the kitchen doorway, Clayton walked in, holding something behind his back. Mom trailed closely behind him, her eyes shining with a soft, secretive excitement. "All right, pipe down, you two," Clayton chuckled, stepping over Finley's outstretched legs. He walked over to where I was sitting and crouched down, meeting me at eye level. "Cassidy," he began, his booming voice dropping to a gentle, fatherly rumble. "When your mother and I decided to bring our lives together, I promised her that her family would become my family. No questions asked. But over these last few weeks, you haven't just become family by marriage. You've proven you have the heart of a true Hardgrove." I felt the familiar prickle of tears in my eyes. I carefully set my mug down on the coffee table, my hands trembling slightly. "Mr. Clayton," he corrected softly. "Or Dad, if you ever feel ready for it. But never Mr. again." He brought his hands forward, revealing what he had been hiding. It was a beautiful, custom-made Stetson hat. The felt was a rich, dark chocolate brown, banded with intricately tooled leather. It was flawless, elegant, and undoubtedly expensive, another subtle hint at the immense wealth this family possessed, yet chose to hide behind their humble exterior. "Every cowboy needs their hat," Tyler spoke up from his armchair, a warm smile breaking across his face. Bose nodded in agreement, pausing his card shuffling. "Keeps the sun out of your eyes so you can see what's coming." Finley sat up, grinning from ear to ear. "And it makes you officially one of us." Clayton gently placed the hat on my head, adjusting the brim so it sat perfectly. It fit like it was made just for me. "To the newest rider of the Hardgrove Ranch," he declared. "Our very own princess." I reached up, my fingers brushing against the soft felt of the brim. The title princess had always sounded like a mockery in my past life. It was a word used to describe spoiled girls who cared only for gold and status. But here, in this room filled with firelight and laughter, it meant something entirely different. It meant I was cherished. It meant I was protected. I looked at Mom, who was wiping a happy tear from her cheek. I looked at Clayton, whose eyes held nothing but unconditional paternal love. And I looked at my three brothers, Tyler, Finley, and Bose, the fierce, wealthy cowboys who had disguised themselves as poor farmers just to make sure my heart was true, only to find themselves becoming my fiercest protectors. "Thank you," I whispered, the firelight reflecting in my tear-filled eyes. "I love it. The cold cellar, the smoke, the cruelty of the Fishers. It all washed away, replaced by the crackling fire, the scent of leather, and the heavy, comforting weight of the hat on my head. I had been reborn, not into a life of ease, but into a life of purpose, surrounded by men who taught me how to stand on my own 2 feet and ride against the wind. The storm of my past was finally over. The long ride home was complete.